Looking at Oedipus's strained relationship with the Oracle of Delphi, it's good for us to take a step back and look at him as a great solver of riddles. We know that he is. He's good at this kind of thing. It's built into his background. He solves that riddle of the Sphinx. What goes on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? Well, it turns out it's man. As an infant, a grown-up, and then an old man with a cane, that maps onto the story as it's told. Oedipus can figure this out. No one else can. He's good at coming to these kind of riddles. But in the play, we see him challenged over and over again by people who are bringing messages back to him from the place behind us of Delphi. Hello, Delphi. We're trying to show you respect in this video, so we hope that you'll give us respect in return. The messengers come bringing messages from this place. They're Creon, Tiresias, Jocasta, the Corinthian messenger who comes, and finally the herdsman from Oedipus's own Thebes. These figures are giving him things that are difficult to understand, but surely can't be much more difficult than the Sphinx, but he's unable to see through them, and he'll pay a terrible price for that inability to understand. We'll take a look at a few of these serially as they come up in the play. Creon is the first to come back from Delphi. He's been sent there by Oedipus to try to find out what's happening, why this plague in the city. Creon comes with a face that's very clear. He has a bright face. He's bringing good news. And his message is that the gods spoke in plain words. King Phoebus, in plain words, commanded us to drive out a pollution from our land, pollution grown ingrained within the land. There's some problem here, and that needs to be solved, and we need to kick out the murderer of Laius. Tiresias then comes in next to try to fill in some of the gaps and say, what's this story really about? Tiresias is not as clear. And when he brings the message from Delphi, while Creon didn't quite understand all the ins and outs of what it is he was saying, Tiresias does. So the clarity that comes from with a certain breeziness in Creon's first message gets really convoluted and ugly when it comes to Tiresias, who knows the full story. He's Apollo's priest, and yes, indeed, we should listen to him. That Oedipus doesn't is a problem. When Tiresias walks in 3:16, he tells us, oh, how horrible is wisdom, how terrible is wisdom. And then soon enough, he tries not to actually come out and tell Oedipus what he knows, but soon enough Oedipus boxes him in because he doesn't, this leader doesn't like someone caging around with him as though there's some great secret that this other person knows, Tiresias, and he's not going to share it with Oedipus. He boxes him in. Tiresias tries to squirrel out of it, but eventually Tiresias has to come to tell him, you are the land's pollution. This happened in line 353. Now the play should be over. Apollo and Apollo's priests have just told Tiresias that he's the one that killed Laius. You're the land's pollution. Apollo has said, we've got to get rid of this murderer. The murderer is a pollution in the land. Tiresias tells us you're the land's pollution, so you've got to go. It should be over at this point. Oedipus, though, is not going to accept the message. So the riddle's been solved early in the play, but now watching Oedipus try to deal with the solution to the riddle is what the rest of it's all about. He says instantly in his response, I didn't grasp that, Oedipus says, 361. Say it again, tell me one more time. Then Oedipus turns nasty and starts accusing Tiresias of all kinds of things. Creon comes back, and now Oedipus starts blaming Tiresias and Creon, at which point Creon just turns around and says on line 602 and to 605, you go ask the oracle, right? He's telling Oedipus to pay some respect and homage to the oracle. Line 628, Creon, I think, puts in a really important message that Oedipus is not quite ready to hear. Suppose you do not understand, Creon asks Oedipus, line 628. Suppose you do not understand. Human beings have to be ready to reckon with times when their knowledge is incomplete, when they can't solve the riddle. And Oedipus is unable to do that in the play. He's consistently saying, well, we're going to prove that this oracle from Delphi is wrong. Of course I'm not going to marry my mother and murder my father. We're going to have to prove that it's wrong. Oedipus, though, is not going to find a solution down that path. Jocasta comes in and says, yes, of course, oracles can make mistakes when she makes her appearance. Laius, my previous husband, was told that he would be killed by his son, but we exposed our child and left him out, so there's no way Laius could have been killed by his son, by his own son, when he was killed at those crossroads, the joining of 3 roads. At which point Oedipus says, what? He was killed where? This king was killed at a crossroads. Oedipus now thinks of back to the point where he happened to run into the person that was in his way, and in a frenzy of fury went ahead and killed the king and his attendants. Now he realizes that what's been said all along is that it's actually right. He's the one who's the murderer of Laius. His reaction at this point is line 727, a wandering of the soul I could run mad. He realizes now, we're about halfway through the play, and Oedipus realizes that indeed the truth that the oracle has been saying is indeed going to be true. He is responsible for the king's death. He doesn't have the whole picture quite yet. That takes a couple of things to come together, a couple of pieces of the story. He sends for this herdsman who happened to escape when Laius was killed, and he wants that herdsman to try to exonerate him from the problem. The thing Oedipus is hanging on to is the story that Laius was killed by thieves, multiple people, and Oedipus, that can't have been thieves in the plural. The person I killed all by my own hands. So if Laius was killed by multiple people, it couldn't have been me that did it. He wants to bring that herdsman in order to confirm that story of multiple killers and so exonerate himself. Of course, it's not going to quite work that way. As he's waiting for the Theban messenger to come, this is a person that it just turns out has a linkage with him in his past. The Theban herdsman who survives that murder scene of Laius is also the one who Laius gave the infant Oedipus to back just as he was born. So this person is already playing multiple important roles in Oedipus's past, unbeknownst to him. The fact that Oedipus is in the dark about this, I think, is the most important piece of the play. Then in the meantime, though, a messenger from Corinth has arrived, and the Corinthian messenger thinks that he has wonderful news for Oedipus. The king there is dead. The king, your father, Polybus, the king of Corinth, is dead. Now that's of course sad, but we want you to come and be king of Corinth, so that's going to be good news. Come and do that. Oedipus and Jocasta at that point rejoice because the oracle that says Oedipus would sleep with or kill his own father can't be true if his father back in Corinth is now dead. But at that point, the messenger from Corinth has another message. It says, oh, no, don't worry about that. There's no way you could have killed your own father even if you had killed him, because he's not a father to you. In fact, it just so happens, am the Corinthian herdsman who got you from some Theban herdsman who handed you over to me, saying that you were no longer wanted in your kingdom. So that you were not actually blood relations with the king of Corinth, you were only an adopted son. Oedipus, of course, thinks this is not good news at all. And when the herdsman comes back in, the Theban herdsman, now two pieces of Oedipus's past have come together. When he was a child and exposed on the hill, this herdsman, this Theban herdsman, was supposed to abandon him there, and rather than do that, he handed him off to a Corinthian who just so happens to be the messenger that's also on the stage at the same time. These two pieces of Oedipus's past come back together. The herdsman's identity, the Theban one, is confirmed 3 times. Oedipus, the chorus, and the Corinthian messenger each recognize him as playing an important role in Oedipus's past, and now the whole thing comes together, and Oedipus hears the tale of how he was indeed exposed on this wilderness, this barren wilderness, with his ankles pinioned together and left to die by Laius had hoped, left to die and never to be a part of his life anymore. An awful, awful thing for Oedipus to contemplate, let alone all the other things that he realizes has happened, which is that now he understands himself to have been indeed the murderer of his own father, Laius. Soon enough, it dawns on him that not only is that true, but if he has been the murderer of his own father, he is also now currently sleeping with his mother. Awful, awful things for him to come to terms with. At which point we hear the screams. Jocasta is now dead. She's hanged herself. Oedipus goes back and rips out his eyes. He's traded this wonderful insight that he has now for blindness. And in a certain sense, Oedipus's coming to a point of blindness physically is an enactment of an inability to see the depth of things around him, that even though he's the smartest, cleverest man around, all of us as humans are left with limits in our own knowledge. Now Oedipus has to deal with his, even though he had refused to do it in the past.